Shane McArdle, Senior Vice President of Production for Kongsberg Digital. We're honoured to have him as the headline partner for the event, and it was a wonderful contribution, Shane, you actually made on that panel. It was a great panel because you had all these operators giving their own perspective, and then you were given a perspective which I think is equally as important from a software point of view. So it's really good to bounce those ideas across from you and also from the other guys as well. So thanks very much for that. Let me ask you, obviously, a few questions because it's really important. Our audience would like to know your opinion on a few things. A number of issues are going to be discussed during this conference. Probably one of the biggest things is the pull of energy transition and technology. It seems to be a very regular theme that we're getting with these types of events. So from sort of my point of view, how can technology companies be the enabler for the energy transition?
Yeah, it's great to be here, Adam, and it was very enjoyable to sit in that panel with all the operators. So yeah, I was trying to step carefully, but I think everyone was saying the same thing. You know, they were all talking about more collaboration, more learning from each other, which is really, really important. You know, and COVID hasn't helped in the last couple of years. You know, even though we've been connected virtually, and yeah, you know, it's getting there, sitting down, talking, being face to face, and that really, really helps. And sessions like this is very, very valuable as well to be able to share those experiences. So look, energy transition, it's something we have to do. We're not getting away from it. And it's not about, you know, should we have to do it. Unfortunately, and I did say this, unfortunately, we are still going to be very dependent on traditional hydrocarbons for decades to come, just unless we fundamentally change how we're going to live our lives, and that's not going to happen. And it is a transition for a reason, because we have to develop the technology. We have to develop the diverse mix of energy. You know, these capital projects, they don't just happen overnight. They take years to develop. So we have an onus on ourselves to focus on the existing infrastructure that's going to be there for a long time and try to make that as sustainable as possible. It's never going to be, you know, net carbon neutral like an offshore wind farm or onshore wind farm, but you know, there's significant room for improvement on these assets. Technology is absolutely going to be the factor that's going to drive this forward, 100%. I mean, there's so many, I would say, assessments done now of different industry leaders, and all of them say, you know, or a majority of them say that technology is key to this change. Now, there's different flavors of technology. There's physical technology, let's say, like, you know, your hydrogen electrolyzers to your wind farms, but also from a software perspective, that they go hand in hand. You know, that's fundamental. And a lot of what we're looking at is data. And I mentioned a little bit in the previous panel. If you can't measure, you can't control. If you can't measure and you can't put it in front of people, you're not going to change behaviors and change the way people work today. There's certain things that we're working on, very, very simple use cases. That's, you know, something like flange management, where you know, this is where you have two pipes being connected together and you have all the bolts, you know, holding them together. And this is a process that's done hundreds of times a year. You know, if you think of how many pipes are in an actual onshore gas facility, there's quite a few. And with that particular type of asset, 30% of all emissions are through faulty flange management. So that those emissions just go into the atmosphere. They're direct correlated to CO2 footprint for that asset. If we can improve that through digitalizing that work process, through use of a digital twin, we'll take a significant chunk down of these faulty emissions that are coming out of these gas facilities. And there's a lot of little use cases like this. Energy optimization is more, I would say, common across different parts of the value chain and different industries. I talked a little bit about the chemical optimization as well. We still use a lot of chemicals, from scale inhibition and meg optimization for hydrates. So, I said this to you before, I think it was in another session, there's no one silver bullet, but there might be 10 bronze bullets that are going to get us there on our sustainable track. And until it pivots over into these more net carbon neutral energy hubs, we have a lot of work to do with our existing infrastructure.
I think that's a good point you said, because the problem with energy transition sometimes is I think everyone is looking for one answer, and there's no one answer, and you're wasting, I think a lot of people waste time looking for that one answer, where
Yeah.
it's not going to happen. As you said, there's going to be a number of bronze bullets to get this facilitated. You're not going to look for one. And I think there's no holy grail. There's no one sort of one solution that will just change everything. It's a journey, it's a process, and it will be a process. And I think we've got to embrace that as well. So where do you see though, Shane, in terms of digitalization, where do you see how it's made the most impact in sort of this sector?
I think I think people. I think people, right? And a lot of people have talked today about how the change management side is complex. We have a lot of
Mm.
resistance to change. Yeah, of course, people are always scared of change. It means my job could be at risk. Oh, I've done this the same way for 20 years. It's efficiency. It's going to be inefficient for a while until you learn a new system, a new technology. But I often talk about it, at different conferences. Smartphones, they really only have become used in the last 10 years. And if you look at your life and how you live your life through a lens of a smartphone, it's completely changed compared to pre 2007 with the advent of the iPhone to where we are today, to the point where people can't think of not having access to all of their information, their data, their emails, their your real time fitness tracking that you're doing of yourself, your library of music and films. And we need to be able to bring this into the industrial world as well. And this is why we often talk about cognitive in the sense of an industrial work surface. It's a place where you come in, you have access to all your data, your insights, overview of your operations. You execute your work there, you close out your work there. And this is the tool that starts learning from your patterns and behaviors and starts to optimize and support you as a person, as an individual. And as an individual, you get better, you're augmented, and then that has an impact on the broader industry. And I did talk about behavior changes, where if you can just see what your impact is on the CO2 footprint, you start to change. Now, if you think of that as from one person's perspective and scale that out to thousands and thousands of people in an organization, which we're doing right now, you can start to see that incrementally and cumulatively add up to having a direct impact on where you want to change behavior. As a product company, there's an onus on us. I mean, Steve Jobs had a lot of faults as a person, but one of the things that he did very well was, if you want to have someone adopt your technology, you have to have a beautiful experience. And the onus is on us as a product company to make this as simple to adopt as possible. Now, again, it's industrial software, so it's always a little bit, let's say, less sexy than more commercial software. But we can make it easy. We can simplify the complex. And I often joke, if my mom can pick up an iPad and start using it for emailing and stuff, anyone can pick up digital technology if it's built with a nice and intuitive interface, with a nice, clear and pleasurable experience. Adoption will grow. So really putting humans central to the technology is going to be very important going into the future.
You made a good point there, because I think sometimes we look at the next generation of where we are. I look at the same with my parents, and they're using iPads, and you think they would never be able to use things like that, and you think if they can do it, anyone should be able to do it. So it's a really good point. I remember the days before iPhone. That the latest phone was the Motorola Flare. This was
Yeah,
like years and years ago. So you
yeah,
see though how quickly, what you said, how quickly technology has moved. It's incredible how
yeah.
this journey is just accelerated, and it will get quicker as well. However, can I ask you though, with the future of energy being a little bit more integrated, how can digitalization deal with all those challenges? Because there will be a number of challenges, I think, as sort of technology gets faster, quicker, more adopted. What sort of your thoughts on that?
Look, it's not getting easier. 20 years ago, I was an operator, and there it was very paper based. As I said, and I mentioned again, you walk out with your P&IDs, your red and blue marker, um, and that was okay. And you used Excel and your phone or your walkie talkies on the facility. Uh, that's not going to be possible in the future. I mean, if you look at how complex and integrated these systems are, it means that there's more decisions to make. There's more information available. Human just doesn't have the capacity to be able to take in all that information and make a quick enough decision. But with the right technology, filtering or providing suggestions through machine learning or AI, then a human is actually a better control of some of these systems. Because at the end of the day, a human will still very much be in the loop. I very strongly believe that. Um,
Mm.
yeah, and I'll give you an example. Isolation planning. We're working on building out an app experience around isolation planning. This is something that happens a couple of hundred times a year on different pieces of equipment. It takes anything from 3 days to a week to isolate and plan around a piece of equipment. We've now
Mm.
taken that down to a couple of hours. It's semi-autonomously done, and within the next 6 to 7 sprints, I think we're going to fully automate this entire business process and workflow. And this is the way we have to start thinking more and more. It's not about IT and OT convergence anymore. It's about workflow convergence. How do we
Mm.
simplify how we work so that one person can do more with how complicated the assets of the future are going to become?
I think that's a good point as well, because you've got, I mean, it's a constant journey, isn't it? Because you're heading up a very important tech company, and I think when you do that, you've got to deal with not just your product, but the perennial change you're having in technology and what other external factors are dealing with as well. So it's a very tough job because you've got to be ahead of the curve in some respects when you do your work. Can I ask you what one sort of last thing, just to sort of conclude, because I would like to ask you, as a sort of digital solutions provider, you know, how can you help your customers innovate in particular?
Yeah, this constantly comes up. It's something to go.
Mm.
We want to innovate. We want to innovate more, and we look at it. Go well. And I don't like the POC terminology, but during that POC, did you do something very different from how you did stuff before? You go, yeah, well, that's innovation. It's there. What they're trying to ask really is, how do we innovate at scale? How do we take that POC, put it into production, take it from production and scale it as fast as possible? And in very many cases, yes, that's what we want to do. And there's some fundamental basics, and a lot of people talked about today. Get your data foundation done, get your data quality pipelines set up. These are all solved challenges. This is not something you need to innovate around. So what I would say is, understand what's being done out there so you don't waste time innovating on a solved challenge. And then you can move forward into more, I would say, exciting or interesting, connected to business cases and business value cases that people really want to see. Because that data foundation, we understand how important it is. It's so important. But sometimes from a management level where you have to get buy-in, they're going, oh yeah, but isn't that done already? Can you tell me how you're actually going to change how people are actually working? So I would say, from an innovation point of view, try to understand what's done out there, talk to the market, and just partner on that piece. Try not to build that piece. I don't think it's interesting. Microsoft, Amazon are all a lot of these services available out there. Get that piece done. Come in then and say, okay, this is a problem that's a challenge for 20,000 users, or it's a case that's done hundreds of thousands of times across all of our assets every single year. And that will have impact, so have
Mm.
focus around our innovation as well. And we very much, like, we're a SaaS company, so we're okay. It's very interesting to sit down and go, oh yeah, let's do a proof of concept in this, but we want to solve industry's challenges, not a bespoke challenge for a single asset for a single user. So this is where you're going to see massive change. Yeah, as I said, innovation. Also be prepared to fail. And as an
Yeah.
operator in a lot of places, our customers, sometimes they don't have the flexibility to fail as much as they think they do. Everyone had this AI solutionism mindset a few years ago. AI will solve everything, and it turns out it doesn't, and that's just the case.
Mm.
Um, but tech companies and software companies, we failed hundreds of times, before we get to this point. So again, partner, look to those people who've done it before, and just try to scale this out, because in a lot of cases, I think that's what people are looking for from an innovation point of view.
Good answer, actually. One quick question. I'll give you. I want just a 60-second answer, and I want to ask you this. In line with the event and in line with the sort of the topic of the event, what do you see the future is of digital twin? How do you see it progressing over the next 5 or 10 years?
Wow, as I said, digital twin is really terminology. It's like the internet of the 90s, and it's something that's just going to be around for a while. So everyone has to understand what their piece is to play with, like with the internet was. And for us, we're very much focused on an industrial work surface. This is where we want people to come every single day. So you have your email, but inside this digital twin or work surface, this is where you have access to your data, you have your insights, you have your real-time refresh and updates of all of the information. And it's where you have the workflows that are digitalized. You perform your work, you execute your work, it's closed out there, it's written back to source systems. So you don't need to, you can leverage your existing infrastructure. You don't need to change that up too much. So I think the future of digital twin is more of as a work surface for the industry, very much like the way a smartphone has changed how we've lived in our day-to-day lives.
That's a great answer. I wanted just to ask you that at the end because I was very keen to get your sort of input on that topic as well. Shane, thank you very much for joining us. It's been a pleasure having you on this event. It's a real honor to have you. And also Kongsberg, as I mentioned, are a headline partner. And please go and see their wonderful exhibition stand in our virtual booth area as well. Thank you very much, Shane.